So, the care and cleaning of your salt stones. Now, before we get into the cleaning, I would just love to talk a little bit about the care, because over and over again, I hear therapists telling me and asking me what to do with their stones because they're getting rough, or they are degrading, they're shrinking, they're getting a lot smaller really quickly, and they want to know what their life expectancy is. At this point, I usually show them one of my stones. This is one of my original stones that I actually cut and carved myself 17 years ago. I have been using this daily, and since its initial sealing and sanding of 17 years ago, I have never once needed to do anything more to it. And so I'd like to just touch base on how you can keep your stones this way. The secret is jojoba. Now, that's not to say that you have to have jojoba as a medium with your massage, although that would be a really good choice. But I know that sometimes you have a medium that you're already using, you know, grapeseed or coconut or a lotion or cream or something like that. But the wonderful thing with the jojoba is that it's actually not an oil. It's actually a liquid wax ester. And what happens when you apply it to the stone, it forms this beautiful, subtle layer of wax, which protects the stone from the moisture. And as we know, stones can be hygroscopic, and so they absorb moisture. So if you're in an environment where it's humid, that's a big reason why a lot of stones can get rough. Now, if you're in the environment and you treat your stones with jojoba, you will have a much better chance of really not getting them that rough at all. And as I said, this one I have never sanded. It's been 17 years and it is so soft. If I put it in my hand and work with my client, they cannot feel where the heat ends and my hand begins. It's that soft and that smooth. It's just like glass. So let's go in now and talk about the cleaning. So, a question we get a lot is, how do I clean my salt stones? I think a lot of therapists have become very accustomed to the long, laborious cleaning routine of the black basalt stones because they do harbor bacteria. Bacteria can hold in those little grooves of the stone or just on the surface itself, and it's really important to thoroughly clean them. However, with salt stones, they're very different. And before I explain a little more about how we clean them, I would like to share a story with you from about 10, maybe 11 years ago. I was selling my salt stones and my bowls to massage therapists. I was at an AMTA convention, and a lady came up to me who was a massage therapist, and she, of course, first question, well, how do you clean them? And before I even had the chance to answer her, her husband gave her a great big nudge and said, honey, I've been a naval officer on the ocean for over 30 years. You don't clean salt. You don't need to clean salt. The mineral content of salt is so intense and so concentrated that nothing can grow on it. Nothing can survive on it. And as I'm listening to him explain this to her, I actually offered him a job. I said, would you like to be at my booth for the rest of the day? Because that was the first question that most people ask is, how do you clean them? So we laughed and chuckled. She bought a bowl, and of course he didn't stay at the booth, and so I had to answer that question many times for the rest of the day. However, in this environment that we all find ourselves in with sanitizing and viruses and everything else, it does not fly to say, oh, I don't clean my salt stones. When I took my stones up to the local hospital and I was working up there for a couple years, it would not have gone down very well if I'd said to them, oh, I don't clean them because they're salt and you don't need to clean them. So there is a really great product that you can use. It's called Decon 30. The name makes it sound very strong and intense and industrial, but it's actually just 2 ingredients, thymol and water. And for those of you who know essential oils, you'll know that thymol is the constituent of thyme oil. And this company up in Canada have figured out how to water disperse the thyme within the water to just have you just have the two ingredients. So it's a very natural way to clean the stones. Now, there's one thing I'd like to mention about the salt stones, is that one of the big differences between salt stones and the basalt stones is that salt stones by nature are hygroscopic. They absorb moisture. So it's very important to know that on several different reasons, but for when we're talking about cleaning, it's very important when you apply the Decon 30 to the stone, that you dry it very, very thoroughly afterwards, because any moisture left on your stone, it will absorb it, and what happens is it will start to break down the salt. It's like if you put salt in water, it dissolves. You don't want your salt stone to dissolve, especially if you buy salt stones from me, because they are so meticulously smooth and soft and ready for professional massage. I would be very upset if you sprayed them with water and got them all salty and rough. If, however, that ever does happen, we do suggest that they can be sanded down very easily with 220 sandpaper. And you just rub it a couple times, put some weight behind it, and it'll get nice and smooth again. You don't need to clean them before you put them back in the bowl every time, but if you choose to clean them after your sessions, then you would just need to have a cloth. You can just put them down next to you, next to the bowl, and bring the stones out. And then basically, there, just a couple sprays. That's it. You want to wait about 30 seconds just to let it soak in and just to let the thyme move around and work around the stone. And then you want to rub very, very thoroughly. You don't want to have that stone left moist at all. It's the one huge, huge difference. Simple as that. It's the huge difference that I say between the basalt stones and the salt stones, and that is that the salt stones need a little bit of extra care in regards to humidity and the environment. So for instance, if you live in a very humid environment like Washington DC, like we are here in the summertime, Florida, and you turn off your air conditioning every night when you leave your office, if it gets humid in the nighttime, that's not going to work for your salt stones, because you may find, and you may already have found, that if you have a lamp, one of those salt lamps, that there's like a liquid at the bottom, that's just melted salt. That's all that is. And you don't want that to happen with your stones, because the biggest thing that will happen is that they will get a little rough and you will have to sand them down with sandpaper again. So if you could always make sure that they're temperature regulated. The office that I'm in, it's not air conditioning, central AC. We have window units. I just keep my window unit on really low for the energy efficient part, and that it doesn't necessarily keep it super cold. It just takes the moisture out of the room, and that's all that you really need to do. So I've had these for many, many years. They're still so soft as they were when I started with them, and there's really no need to do any sanding with them at all. The only two times that you need to keep up their smooth surface with a brief sanding is, one, if they're subject to moisture, or two, if you're deciding to use a medium with your massage other than a pure oil or jojoba. Because what happens is when you're using like biotone or lotion, you're going to have some kind of chemical component in there, and the salt stone will hold on to that, and over time it will cause a slight roughness. So that's how easy it is to clean them. So I would like to touch base just a little more on that final sealing with your jojoba after you've cleaned your stones. I kind of raced through it and I just wanted to show you, give you a visual as to what I mean. Basically, you have your microfiber cloth that you will have your stones on after cleaning them. I've already cleaned these, but just for the sake of showing you, I'm going to just put them here. So we got some stones here that have all been cleaned, and the cleaner, the Decon 30, can be a little astringent. So if you're looking to protect your stones and care for your stones and have them last as long as possible and to stay as smooth as glass for as long as possible, I wanted to just go a little further and be a little more detailed about the final sealing with the jojoba every time you clean them. Now, what I suggest you do is you have another microfiber cloth that is the sole job of that microfiber cloth is to buff your stones. And I have one here. I have never washed this microfiber cloth. It's got a nice kind of a waxy feel to it because it's got the jojoba in there. I've never washed it. You want to keep all that waxy layer on it, and you want to keep it between sessions in a plastic bag, because if it goes against your sheet or a pillow, it'll absorb that waxy residue. So have a second cloth set aside in a plastic bag, and the sole job of this is to buff your stones. So we've got some jojoba here. Jojoba Care, I love this company. They've been around a long time. And I just want to put a little bit in the palm of my hand. It's barely a teaspoon. I would say it's maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon. There's really not much. This will be plenty to do 6 stones. We have 4 stones here. You just pick up your stone. Next one. Next one. And this one. Now, as you can see here, these stones are really shiny and really glistening. I hope you can see that. They've been cleaned, they've been seasoned, they've got the jojoba on them, and they're still a little kind of waxy feeling. So then you get your other cloth and you just give them a little buff. That's it. You just wipe off that slight residue of jojoba. The slight residue will go into your cloth and remain. So over time, you probably use a lot less of this when you're cleaning. Sometimes I have one cloth in the back that I've been using for a long time, and I sometimes don't even need to put jojoba on the stones because just rubbing them with the cloth is enough, and I can see it's got that beautiful layer put back on again when I prepare stones to send out for people. These ones I don't need to do because I only use the jojoba as a medium. So there you go, and you can just pop it straight back in. And that will really help your stones over the years of your working to protect them from moisture, protect them from getting rough, and just protect them. It's really wonderful. You don't get that protection with oil. You don't get that protection with grapeseed. You don't get that protection with obviously lotion or cream, but you do with the jojoba. So please get yourself a little bottle of jojoba and finish them off after every session when you've cleaned them. Or if you don't clean them, then just go ahead. If you're using something other than jojoba, finish them off at the end of the day with a layer of jojoba. So they do have a little bit of that waxy residue to protect them, because that's really important, so that you can keep your stones as smooth as they are, as glassy as they are, so that when you're working with them in your hand, your client cannot feel that stone. All they can feel is the intense heat and your hands.